With apologies to my girlfriend, I believe I am developing a celebrity crush on Janet Gaynor. Even though she is since grown old and died way before I was born. A Star is Born was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Assistant Director for Eric G. Stacey. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, credit to Alan Campbell, Robert Carson, and Dorothy Parker, based on an original story that was written by William Wellman and Robert Carson that was written for the movie. Yeah. We're still in that period of time. Janet Gaynor was nominated for her role as Esther Victoria Blodgett, or her stage name Vicky Lester. Now, Janet Gaynor was the very first actress to win the Academy Award for Best Actress, way back in the first ceremonies in 1929. For her roles, because back then the Best Actor and Actress Award were more about your work as a whole of that year and not for one particular film. So her first win was for her roles in Seventh Heaven, Street Angel, and Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Now, of course, this is back in the silent era, so to see her in a talking picture is something that quite excited me. I've yet to see a person in the silent film era fully transition into the talkie era, at least while doing this. I'm sure there are other ways I could have seen it with other movies, but I've never seen it with an Academy Award-winning film before. It was nominated for Best Actor, credit to Frederick March for his role as Norman Maine. Now, Frederick March also won an Academy Award. He won it for his 1931 film Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Guess which role he played in that film. I didn't get to see that film because I couldn't find it. It just wasn't available. It was hard to find. So I watched the film that the win was tied with, which is The Champ. Wallace Beery was tied with March for winning Best Actor that year. It was like one of the very first ties, I think. So you can watch that review if you want to check that out. It was nominated for Best Director, credit to William A. Wellman. Wellman directed the very first movie to win Best Picture, the 1927 silent film Wings, a film that I actually genuinely enjoyed. So lots of talent here, and to top it all off, Outstanding Production, or Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Picture, credited to David O. Selznick, who was one of the big independent film producers of that time, the owner of Selznick International Pictures, which would go on to win Best Picture for another film, something I will get to, but this film was a pretty big deal. However, during this time, this was just merely the 4th time Selznick ever had a film that was nominated for Best Picture. So, again, lots of talent, lots of recognized talent in the Academy Awards for this year for this movie. The award it actually won was Best Writing of an Original Story, which is credited to the director himself, William A. Wellman. That was unusual for the time, and Robert Carson. So, what was this movie about? Well, this movie was about a lady, a very young lady named Esther, who lives in a small town in North Dakota. And she is, I guess you could say, that era's version of a movie buff. Not necessarily by today's definition of a movie buff, or a movie nerd, or a screen junkie, or that kind of thing. Not someone who's like, oh my gosh, I love that director, I love the way he writes, or I love the way he shoots, that kind of thing. Oh my gosh, the way the actor did that performance. She was more of just enjoying the visceral experience of watching actors perform on screen, watching stories being told on this big screen. That's what she was interested in. And her interest gets to the point where she wants to go to Hollywood and make it big for herself. So she does. With the help of some money that her grandmother was saving, she goes to Hollywood, tries to find some work, even if it's not actually in the acting stuff that she really, really wants, trying to make it by, but with the hopes that she will eventually make it big as a big star. During this period, she gets a job as a waitress for a gathering of actors, producers, and directors, a nice little get-together ball, I don't know, something like that. She runs into Norman Maine, who at the time was a huge actor. These are fictional characters, by the way, but in this version of Hollywood, Norman Maine is this huge actor compared to the likes of, I don't know, Gary Cooper or, I don't know, Spencer Tracy, Paul Muni, I don't know. But he's a big star, very big star. And unfortunately, his star power seems to be getting the best of him as he's going through a period where he's starting to burn out. He's starting to lose some of that star power. He's drinking too much. He's being a problem on set. But his downfall hasn't quite come yet. During this time, he meets this waitress, and the two seem to develop something. A little bit of chemistry. It's not quite romance yet, but they are able to carry a great conversation with one another. They bounce off of each other really well. So, Norman decides to give her a screen test, which ends up turning into her big break, and through and through, she eventually becomes a big star, known by her stage name as Vicky Lester, because Esther Victoria Blodgett isn't really a real attractive name for a movie star, so Vicky Lester. And of course, during their time, the two get really close, they star in a movie together, and eventually, what do you know, they get married! And they are the it couple of Hollywood, the big veteran movie star along with America's newest sweetheart. However, the real drama of the film begins to set in. As Vicky Lester's star grows on the rise, Norman Maine's star power begins to drop. It's something almost poetic about their romantic relationship. It ends up turning a little bit tragic. As the story kind of turns into a bit of a tragedy. It starts out as this movie with full of life and optimism and that kind of thing, and then in the second half, the tone shifts and it turns into something a bit darker. I loved this film. When it started off, I was liking it, but I think I was liking it in sort of the guilty pleasure of, yay, they're making a film about Hollywood. I like watching movies about Hollywood, even documentaries, anything about how the movies get made. I like being in that sort of world. So it started out as a guilty pleasure, but soon the movie evolved beyond that. It became more than that, and that was really quite pleasing, the fact that this film, it really achieves well on its own. That the themes of this film begin to transcend that of its setting as just a Hollywood movie about Hollywood. I wish I could talk more about some of the stuff that happens in the film, but I'm afraid that would spoil it. But let me tell you, the film does get deep, and sometimes it goes into a few dark corners. Janet Gaynor was wonderful to watch in this film. It was nice to hear her talk. I've never seen her in a film when she talks, but she's talking in this one, and it's great to watch. I mean, she's able to show range, not just emotional range, but also maturity range. In the beginning of the film, she is a giddy young woman, but later on in the film, she grows and matures into quite a more mature woman? I feel like I was going somewhere clever, but you get the point. She was maturing. Her character was maturing throughout the film, which makes me believe the fact that she got nominated. She's not just some actress that was in a famous film. She was nominated for her talent, or at least that's what I believe, because she shows a really great performance in this film. Fredric March puts on a really great performance in this film. I had never seen anything by Fredric March, but I knew that he was playing a movie star, and I was a little bit worried that he was gonna overdo the charm and try to, I don't know, one-up Clark Gable, charm and wit, hey, how's it going, that kind of thing. But thankfully, he manages to show some reserve in his acting. He's charming, nonetheless, but it's more realistic. It's not just, hey, I'm a movie star, I'm in a movie, that kind of thing. Not that I'm dissing Clark Gable's acting or anything like that, but Fredric March was able to portray kind of a realistic character. What's also refreshing is that this feature is in color. It's the very first Best Picture nominee I've ever seen. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. It's the very first feature film winning an Academy Award that I've ever seen in color. And color doesn't look perfect. You could tell it doesn't quite look as flawless in the same way that Wizard of Oz will look a few years later. But it's color all the same, and it is refreshing to look at after seeing black and white for so long. It even feels like the cinematography is a little bit different. The lighting is different because of the fact that it's in color. All in all, A Star is Born is quite a wonderful film. It's no wonder why this film has been remade twice and why there's even talks of the film getting remade again. It's a great story. It's a wonderful story of fame, romance, and celebrity. I would say it's a bucket list film. I've thought long and hard about it, but really, I can't find really too much that's wrong with this film. It is an excellent film. If you see it on TV, you should really check it out. If you're into Hollywood, if you like Golden Age Hollywood, this is a must-watch for you. If it airs on TCM and it's on, don't change the channel. That is my review of A Star is Born. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.